The answer is Kazuha. That's it. That's your answer. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Just kidding. Well, sort of. If you wanted a quick answer, that really is the answer. It's Kazuha. But if you're like me, you want to find out why. Before we go any further, let me just pause here and say that if you already like a character, then you shouldn't listen to what I or anyone else says, and you should just go for that character. This video is mainly for new players who are just starting out and may not know enough to make an informed decision. So I'll show you in this short demonstration why you should pick Kazuha, at least as a new player. Now, we all know that Genshin is an exploration game, or even if you don't see it that way, there's a lot of exploration in it. And he makes things a lot easier, especially with respect to vertical exploration. So as you can see right now, we're in Starfell Valley, the northern part, and here we have this teleport point below this huge cliff. And sometimes you need to get up this cliff, and the shortest way up, if you don't climb, ends up being going from somewhere like the Statue of the Seven or this waypoint here all the way up the cliff, or maybe this domain. You can't even climb up here either. If you recall, this is where you start the game on the beach, and then you have like huge cliffs up here, so you can't even climb up there. So if you have Kazuha, then, well, first of all, let's just first climb it without doing anything, just regularly. It's quite a long way up, which means you end up using a lot of stamina to get up there, at least if you want to climb quickly. And as you can see, you can't really climb quickly, right? At least for a big portion of it, you have to slow climb. Otherwise, you don't have enough stamina.
3 new camps have popped up nearby.
Oh, look, it's Harry. He patrols here, but he's always useless. Anyway, if you have Kazuha, though, you can actually use his elemental skill to kind of launch yourself up into the air, right? So if you hold his elemental skill, you get pretty high up, and then you press space to kind of get on the cliff. And then like this, it's a lot easier. I think you still don't have enough, or maybe you do. Okay, so you still don't have enough, barely. But actually at this point, I'll show you guys another trick. So if you drop and use Kazuha's skill really fast, right? So I'll do it now. You can actually get a bit higher up and not only not use any stamina, but you'll kind of save stamina because you're technically not gliding or climbing during the time that he's getting boosted up by his skill. So watch the stamina bar. I'll do it again. See? So you can actually keep doing that and basically have infinite climbing stamina. So that is a super useful thing about Kazuha.
The wind knows me.
And also situations like this, where you don't have to like climb the ladder. See, if I was down here and I didn't have Kazuha, I have to go all the way here, climb up, and then go all the way around here again and climb up. But with Kazuha, then you can kind of shoot yourself straight up there. Super nice, super useful. Especially if you're doing that commission where they're shooting at you from up here. And another nice thing about Kazuha is that he is what I like to call a utility character. So he's not a damage dealing character like Al-Haitham, right? He's not a DPS character or a main carry, whatever terminology you like. Well, actually, you can make him into one with Constellation 6, but that's a topic for another video. So base Kazuha, he's a utility character, which means he's less likely to be power crept, right? So damage dealing characters, they tend to be somewhat overshadowed by other damage dealing characters that are released later in time. And although Genshin is pretty good in this aspect, so the power creep in Genshin is very, very weak, so that even characters that are released like 1 or 2 years later, maybe 3 years later, are kind of side grades, right? So for example, Ganyu here, she was released pretty close to the game's release date in 2021, and she's still very, very so-called meta, right? So she's still very competitive with even recent characters. So Al-Haitham, he was released much later, and he does have a lot of good
Wait.
teams, but he is, because he's ultimately a damage dealing character,
Whatever.
then, you know, there's a significant chance that someone down the line who is kind of better, in a sense, will come out. But Kazuha, because he's a utility character, he's not as replaceable, right? So he has a lot going for him. He has that, you know, the exploration shortcut that I showed you guys, where he launches himself in the air. That's elemental skill.
The wind knows me. As one with wind and cloud.
Take flight. Busted.
Into the wind.
Quietly now. Whirling snow. And away I go.
Another thing he does is crowd control, right? So this is part of his utility kit. So he can sort of bring a bunch of enemies together and kind of suck them in, right? Get them all in one location so you can hit them all at once. So all of this put together means that he's unlikely to be replaced by someone who does everything he does, but better, right? That's really unlikely to happen. There are characters who can do some things better, like Venti has arguably better crowd control. So Venti's burst kind of sucks things in a bit better than Kazuha's skill. But then Venti doesn't have a damage buff, right? And Kazuha does. And they're both Anemo, so they can both take advantage of the Viridescent Venerer, right, artifact set. So that decreases the resistance of whatever element is swirled by an Anemo attack. So he's kind of like a 2-in-1 in terms of buffing, right? He can buff your damage, your elemental damage, and then he also decreases the enemy's elemental resistance at the same time. Another nice thing about Kazuha for exploration purposes is this passive here, Cloud Strider. So this will actually decrease the stamina consumption for all of your party members, as long as Kazuha is in that party. So 20% is actually quite a lot, and I'll demonstrate this in a bit. As for the last thing, so this isn't really Kazuha specific, but it is kind of very much related. So Kazuha, because he's Anemo, he can help you activate Anemo Resonance. And as you can see here, this decreases your stamina consumption by 15%, movement speed by 10%, that's super important, and it also does shorten your elemental skill cooldown by 5%. So you might think this is strictly a combat thing, right? But there are actually elemental skills out there that help you move around, Kazuha's being one example. So with this, you'll be able to use his elemental skill 5% more often, which does help a bit if you're trying to rely on this to get up a very tall cliff. So just to give you a quick idea of how effective those last two things were, so the Kazuha's sprint passive as well as Anemo Resonance, we're going to have the Anemo Traveler here, Lumine, sprint across the bridge. So in this situation, in this example, she's by herself, and we're going to see how far she gets and how long it takes her to get that far. So now in this next example, we've added Kazuha as well as two random characters who don't provide any movement speed buffs, right? So you do need a full party to activate elemental resonance effects. So as you can see, Anemo Resonance is now activated, and again, Ayaka and Raiden don't give you any kind of movement speed buffs. So this is purely the effect of adding Kazuha. So now she's going to run across the bridge like the first time, and we're going to see how far she gets with her stamina bar and how long it takes her to get there.
Finding someone to chat to would be better than just standing around.
So as you can see, she ran pretty much twice as far. The first point that she got to last run, on the first run, I think when we got to that point on this run, her stamina was like maybe half or a little bit over half drained. So it's quite a big difference. And just to illustrate the point again, we'll take Kazuha out and add in a random party member.
Oh, is it time for me to join you?
Pretty sure Hu Tao doesn't have any movement speed bonuses either. So again, we'll do the test and have Lumine run across the bridge. And she should end up around the same point as on the first run. Let's go. Yeah, I think that's around the same point. It looks a bit different because it's a different time of the day, so the sun is, you know, casting a shadow. But yeah, I mean, that is... Wow, that's actually, I think, exactly about twice as far. Which kind of makes sense given the stamina you save and the speed bonus, right? So you're saving about 35% stamina, and you're moving 10% faster on top of that. So going, I guess, going twice as far, or put it another way, without those savings going half as far, right, or 50% as far, makes quite a lot of sense. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, Al-Haitham is by no means a bad character, right? He has a lot of teams where, you know, they're kind of meta teams, so to speak. He does a lot of damage, he's pretty fun to play. The gist of how he works is that his elemental skill will generate mirrors for you, and then his normal attacks will also generate mirrors for you. And these mirrors, while they exist, they'll kind of rain down dendro attacks on enemies that you hit while you're attacking, right, with his normal attack. And then his burst just does a bunch of damage, and it does more damage if you have more mirrors. So it's all about the mirrors.